Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Mary's Book Club. Today we're going to be reviewing Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now this is a book I should have gotten to a long time ago because my cousin actually introduced me to Colleen Hoover. I might have talked about this on the It Ends With Us book review, but I loved that book. And I was so excited to read the next one, which I think was November 9th. And then I read Ugly Love. And then came It Starts With Us. And at that point, I really started to feel like her stuff was redundant. I thought it was very like preteen. I don't know. I feel like her writing is suitable for the adolescent or for a woman that is coming of age or an actual older woman that likes to kind of venture off into the fantasy of what like teen hormone-driven love could look like. Does that make sense? But it was boring to me after a while, so I just couldn't do it anymore. But I decided to give Verity a chance because I was always told by my cousin and other people that it's not the romance that she typically writes. It's more of a thriller, which is a little bit, not her vibe, but that it's nice and it keeps you like hooked, which it did. I did get to the point where I wanted to know where the point of the story was. However, this is the longest intro I've ever had for a book review, so I'm not going to go any further. The synopsis of the book is about a woman who is recruited to finish a series of books that a really prominent author started. But for one reason or another, she's physically not able because she's currently ill. So the main character is hired on to basically finish the series on behalf of the woman. And she decides she wants to go by pseudonym because she, unlike the author, does not like all the publicity. She doesn't want to do the book tours, the signings, any of that. She just wants to do her work. One thing leads to another. She starts discovering more about this author, which leads her into a whole entanglement with the family, a very unhealthy one. Long story short, the end is quite interesting. But let's jump into the quotes before I give too much away. I hear the crack of his skull before the splattering of blood reaches me. I gasp and take a quick step onto the sidewalk. One of my heels doesn't clear the curb, so I grip the pole of a no parking sign to steady myself. The man was in front of me a matter of seconds ago. We were standing in a crowd of people waiting for the crosswalk light to illuminate when he stepped into the street prematurely, resulting in a run-in with a truck. I lunged forward in an attempt to stop him, grasping at nothing as he went down. I closed my eyes before his head went under the tire, but I heard it pop like the cork of a champagne bottle. He was in the wrong, looking casually down at his phone, probably a side effect of crossing the same street without incident many times before. Death by routine. If I were still living in Virginia, this would play out in a completely different manner. Everyone around would stop. Panic would ensue. People would be screaming. A news crew would be on scene in a matter of minutes. But here in Manhattan, a pedestrian struck by a vehicle happens so often, it's not much more than an inconvenience. A delay in traffic for some, a ruined wardrobe for others. This probably happens so often it won't even end up in print. As much as the indifference in some of the people here disturbs me, it's exactly why I moved to the city 10 years ago. People like me belong in overpopulated cities. The state of my life is irrelevant in a place this size. There are far more people here with stories much more pitiful than mine. Here, I'm invisible, unimportant. Manhattan is too crowded to give a shit about me, and I love her for it. Are you hurt? I look up at a man as he touches my arm and scans my shirt. Deep concern is embedded in his expression as he looks me up and down, assessing me for injuries. I can tell by his reaction that he isn't one of the more hardened New Yorkers. He might live here now, but wherever he's from, it's a place that didn't completely beat the empathy out of him. His eyes match the tie he just shoved in his pocket. Chartreuse. He's handsome, but there's something about him that makes me think he wishes he weren't. Almost as if his looks might be an inconvenience to him. A part of him he doesn't want anyone to notice. He wants to be invisible in the city, just like me. Most people come to New York to be discovered. The rest of us come here to hide. Interesting. What about you, he asks. He leans against the counter like this is a conversation he's ready for. A conversation he's been waiting for. Someone to come along and make his tragedy seem less tragic. It's what you do when you've experienced the worst of the worst. You seek out people like you. People worse off than you. And you use them to make yourself feel better about the terrible things that have happened to you. I want him to smile, but it doesn't fit the moment. I'm curious what his smile would look like. Instead, he shrugs a little and says, "All right then." He moves to unlock the door. He holds it open for me, but I don't exit right away. Instead, I continue to watch him. not quite ready to face the world outside. I appreciate his kindness and want to say more, to thank him in some way, maybe over coffee or by returning his shirt to him. I find myself drawn to his altruism, a rarity these days, but it's the flash of wedding ring on his left hand that propels me forward. Out of the bathroom and coffee shop, onto the streets now buzzing with an even larger crowd. My mother had been living with me for the past 9 months, since she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. She passed away last Wednesday after 3 months on hospice. It was difficult to leave the apartment in those last few months because she relied on me for everything, from drinking to eating to turning her over in her bed. When she took a turn for the worse, I wasn't able to leave her alone at all, which is why I didn't step foot outside of my apartment for weeks. Luckily, a Wi-Fi connection and a credit card make it easy to live life completely indoors in Manhattan. Anything and everything a person could possibly need can be delivered. Funny how one of the most populated cities in the world can double as a paradise for agoraphobics. You okay? Corey asks. I mask my disquiet with a smile, even if his concern is only a formality. I'm fine. It helps that it was expected. I'm only saying what I think he wants to hear. I'm not sure how he'd react to the truth, that I'm relieved she's gone. My mother only ever brought guilt into my life. Nothing less, nothing more. Just consistent guilt. Our sexual relationship only lasted as long as it did because he wasn't serious about anyone else and neither was I. It was convenient until it wasn't. But the reason our actual relationship was so short-lived is because he was in love with another woman. Never mind that other woman in our relationship was also me. It has to be confusing. Falling in love with the writer's words before you meet the actual writer. Some people find it difficult to separate a character from the individual who created them. Corey, surprisingly, is one of those people. Despite being a literary agent, he met and fell in love with the female protagonist of my first novel, Open Ended, before he ever spoke to me. He assumed my character's personality was a close reflection of my own, when in fact, I couldn't be more opposite from her. I'm sure our relationship broke a code of ethics somewhere, but I'm not sure that contributed to how short-lived it was. As soon as Corey figured out that I wasn't the person my character was based on, he realized we weren't compatible. I wasn't heroic. I wasn't simple. I was difficult. An emotionally challenging puzzle he wasn't up for solving, which was fine. I wasn't in the mood to be solved. I appreciate the offer, Jeremy, but honestly, it's not something I'm comfortable with. I'm not good with publicity. I'm not even sure why your wife's publisher reached out to me as an option in the first place. Open-ended, Jeremy says. I stiffen when he mentions one of the books I've written. It was one of Verity's favorite books. Your wife read one of my books? She said you were going to be the next big thing. I'm the one who gave her editor your name because Verity thinks your writing styles are similar. If anyone is going to take over Verity's series, I want it to be someone whose work she respects. I walk to one of the shelves closest to me and run my hand over some of the books. They're foreign editions of her work. I pluck a German copy from the shelf and examine it. She has her laptop and a desktop, Jeremy says. I wrote the passwords on sticky notes for you. He picks up a notebook next to her computer. She was constantly taking notes, writing down thoughts. She'd write ideas on napkins, dialogue in the shower on a waterproof notepad. Jeremy drops the notepad back onto the desk. She once used a Sharpie to write down character names on the bottom of Crue's diaper. We were at the zoo and she didn't have a notepad. He does a full, slow circle as he looks around her office, like it's been a while since he stepped foot in here. The world was her manuscript. No surface was safe. Okay, this is going to be the last bit because I didn't realize I highlighted so much. Authors know the thing I abhor most about autobiographies are the counterfeit thoughts draped over every sentence. A writer should never have the audacity to write about themselves unless they're willing to separate every layer of protection between the author's soul and their book. The words should come directly from the center of the gut, tearing through flesh and bone as they break free. Ugly and honest and bloody and a little bit terrifying, but completely exposed. An autobiography encouraging the reader to like the author is not a true autobiography. No one is likable from the inside out. One should only walk away from an autobiography with, at best, an uncomfortable distaste for its author. I will deliver. What you will read will taste so bad at times, you'll want to spit it out. But you'll swallow these words, and they will become part of you, part of your gut, and you will hurt because of them. Yet, even with my generous warning, you're going to continue to ingest my words, because here you are, human, curious. Carry on. Chapter 1. And that's when the book really begins, right? Isn't it crazy that everything that I have highlighted so far is not even like scratching the surface of the surface? She wasn't lying, right? Even though she's writing a book about another book, she was not lying. The book itself, the storyline, the twist at the very end, I have never felt so uncomfortably sick in my life. It kept me up until 4 a.m. reading. I was taking a bath when I started reading. I ended up an hour and a half in the tub, completely wrinkled and shriveled, jumped on the couch to air dry, and ended it up in bed and read it up until 3 a.m. in the morning. And then I could not sleep after that, right? Because the ending was so disturbing for me. Yes, I recognize that it's fiction, and maybe that means that she did her job, but it was so disturbing. It's kind of like when you watch a movie and then you associate the character with the actor to where that you no longer like them anymore, or you love them based on whatever you saw. But typically it's always the opposite, the villain, so to speak. In this case, it was just like so twisted, so dark, so intense. I left it like gutted. And I vowed that this is going to be my last Colleen Hoover book for one reason or another. Before, it was that the romance was too romancy. This was just, she just took it too far. Okay, she took it too far. And if I read another one of her books, then I suppose, that just makes me a scapegoat. But I can't. I could not. I left and I was upset. I was genuinely upset. I was like, why would she do this? And then it turns out there's an extended version that has like an additional prologue or post. I don't know if I'm using the right word, but the last part of the book. Because my friend who I read the book with said that she read it. And she said it gets even worse. But the way that the book already ended, I can't imagine how it could get worse. But apparently it does. And I'm here to say that I won't be finding out. She asked me if I wanted to know or if I wanted to borrow and read it. And I was like, no, thank you. I am sick, right? But nevertheless, again, I still feel like I'm glad I got it out of my system. But I also wish I didn't read it. Now let's rate the book. Surprisingly, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Here's why. If her intention was to disturb you, was to make you feel, she did her job. From a personal likability standpoint, it's in the negatives. Like, I did not like the feeling that I left with, but I feel like she wrote it well. She accomplished her purpose. I just hated the outcome because I was like, what in the actual? Why write a story like this? Why? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this book review. As usual, I will have the links for the hard copy / paperback, if it exists, and the Kindle and the audiobook for you. This is in fact the second Sunday of March, but it's in line with what we did last month. So hopefully April, in my new year, I'll be on time. Let's see. Thank you for sticking with me, and I will see you on the first Sunday of April. Bye.